A judge in Seattle is set to hear lawsuits filed by 4 states tomorrow, challenging the constitutionality of President Trump's executive order seeking to eliminate birthright citizenship. 18 other states have also filed in federal court in Massachusetts, claiming Trump's initiative violates the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
States that the executive order violates the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It violates our U.S. Constitution. It also violates the Immigration and Nationality Act and flouts more than 125 years, a century and a quarter, of long-standing, well-established precedent set by the U.S. Supreme Court.
The White House hit back at the suits, calling them, quote, nothing more than an extension of the left's resistance. And the Trump administration is ready to face them in court, end quote. Joining us now to discuss all this is Lenni B. Benson. She's a distinguished professor of immigration and human rights law at the New York Law School. It is great to speak to you on a topic like this today, because in any other year, we might think that these rights are protected under the Constitution. But really, isn't this all about how the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution and established law? Just help us understand how the president's executive orders may function.
So first, I think the audience should remember our founders did not want a monarch in charge of our government. And so the whole structure of the Constitution, we call it checks and balances. Our Congress writes the law. And interestingly, nowhere in the Constitution, in the original draft or the original document that was adopted in the beginning of the country, did it define citizenship. It was left to Congress to write statutes to define the national citizenship. So really, Mr. Trump's executive order is attempting with his pen to not only rewrite the Constitution, rewrite the congressional statutes that interpret the Constitution, and overturn a longstanding precedent of the Supreme Court.
President Trump likely, though, and his team would have known that there would be this type of challenge to such a dramatic move.
Yes.
And we have seen the Supreme Court in recent years move in a more conservative direction, upending Roe versus Wade, gutting the Civil Rights Act. So in essence, could we be in new territory here where they may agree in his favor?
All of the scholars that I know who've studied this, and they include a broad spectrum of people, believe that the legislative history about the 14th Amendment and the text of the amendment itself supports a conservative justice following the will of the people in amending the Constitution and in Congress in adopting its statutes. To allow a president's order to overcome or change the interpretation without the traditional historical analysis or textual analysis is very unlikely, even in this conservative court. But I do want to say that Mr. Trump has had this issue on his agenda even before he was elected in the prior term. Many politicians since the Reagan era have introduced bills in Congress to try to limit the citizenship for people born in the territory. And what will be the tragic result until a court can stop this executive order is that anyone, a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident, anyone applying for documents that require proof of citizenship will likely now have to establish proof of their parents' citizenship or status. And for many people in the United States, their parents have passed away, or there's no records, even in the federal system, of what status their parents were in. They could have been here as a student, a work visa. They could have had a time period where several generations before, like my own grandfather, he naturalized as a child. There is no record with his name on it that says he's a U.S. citizen. So it's really a fear tactic. And unfortunately, if courts do not stop this, what President Trump does have the power to do is slow down any application a federal government office would making, like a passport or a visa petition, until you can absolutely prove your citizenship to their satisfaction.
And just as a point of reference, Trump's mother, late mother, is Scottish. Professor Lenni B. Benson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.